Hi, I'm Carrie Penny, and on this episode of Secret Heart Broadcasting, I'll be speaking with National Theatre Director Glynis Leyshon. She's a pioneering woman theatre director, opera director, adjunct professor, teacher, lover of the arts. She talks about bravery, of course, and the idea that honesty, true honesty in a relationship or in a career can move something from good enough to great. She's my guest on Secret Heart Broadcasting. Hi, I'm Carrie Penny, and welcome to Secret Heart Broadcasting. On this episode, I'm speaking with Canadian theatre director Glynis Leyshon. And one of the things I love about getting older is that it has given me courage. I have joined the I Don't Care Club, in that if I meet someone who is captivating, I'll ask questions. And now with Secret Heart Broadcasting, I can ask them to be on the program. And sometimes people say yes. Glynis Leyshon did. Glynis, welcome to Secret Heart Broadcasting.
I'm thrilled to be here. I am.
So I introduced you as Canadian theatre director Glynis Leyshon. You have, one of the many things that intrigued me about you is you have made a career in traditionally a man's world across the country. I'm betting internationally as well, stage and opera. And just tell me how that happened. We can, rewind right back to the beginning. We, Glynis, who maybe grew up in Wales, I don't know. Tell me a bit about how you grew up.
Well, actually, isn't that interesting? Actually, I was born in Scotland.
Oh.
My dad is Welsh. My mother's Scots. They met during the war. My father was a Spitfire pilot, one of those brave men. And my mom was one of those extraordinary women who was a flight mechanic because of the war. My dad trained in Alberta, fell in love with Canada. And so after the war, they made the decision that the place they wanted to make a life was Canada. So as a very, very, this was in the early 50s. And I was bundled off to Canada, my brother and I, and we'd made our life here, thank goodness, because we love it.
Where did they land in Canada? You said he came to train.
My dad came first. He landed in Montreal, and he got on a train, and he stopped. And the first place he could find a job was Winnipeg. So that's where we started, in a textile company. I mean, go figure, nothing to do with anything before. And then, so we came out, we lived in Winnipeg. Then my dad was made a manager in Vancouver, and my mother thought she had died and gone to heaven, because it was much more like Scotland. They loved Winnipeg, loved the neighbors, the friendships that develop on the prairies, as they do, but loved Vancouver. So that's where I grew up. And as I grew up in Vancouver, I have absolutely I thought about this question, Carrie. I have absolutely no idea why, except that my mother always was passionate about the arts. But it was my father's younger brother after the war, was a scholarship student to RADA, the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts, which is a big deal and very prestigious, from a little town called Pencoed in Wales. Go figure. I have no idea how that happened. But he was a professional actor. And so I guess that gene was there. And growing up, I did the usual. I did community theater and school plays and all of that. And but I really thought I was going to be an academic. I thought my degree's in art history, which is a great degree, by the way, for a theater director. So I was lucky. But I went to university, the first in our family to do that. So that was very important to my parents. And I became involved, as one does. I took one theater course, and you get seduced. And the professor, Carl Hare, at the University of Victoria, had started a theater company on one of those OFY grants, that Trudeau Sr. had started all across the country. And I started there and became an actor, and then very quickly moved on to directing. That was obviously more my thing. And I was, lots of little interval things, but the big event was that I chose to go back to theater school to really learn about acting at the Vancouver Playhouse under Christopher Newton, that famous man of theater, very much my mentor. And that really was a seminal experience for me. It was a wonderful school. It only accepted 12 students for 2 years. In your second year, you did main stage productions at Regional Theatre, the Vancouver Playhouse. And obviously, it's become a huge part of my life because Christopher Newton was my mentor. He supported my work. Once I left school, I became his assistant. I continued to work at the Playhouse and then later at the Shaw Festival, which was a big deal.
I am struck by the idea of your mother, you said, was a mechanic during the Second World War. So she had an independence and of course, and women during the war had the freedom to pursue a career, whereas before they couldn't. But do you think that sense of modeling independence was instrumental in you believing that I'm going to be the first person to go to university? I'm going to have this career. I am going to express who I am in the world.
Absolutely. I had both parents support everything that I really was passionate about. The only thing they really did want was me to finish my degree. They didn't want me to stop and go directly into theater. They wanted me to complete that degree. But they were totally supportive. My mother always worked. We were lucky in that my grandmother had come to Canada just to help us get settled, loved it, stayed. So my mom she became an insurance underwriter, which is not a field that many women were in at that time. So yes, she was always fiercely independent, and my father loved her independence. So pretty remarkable.
You mentioned that your mother was in a field that not a lot of women were in. I imagine there were not a lot of women directors in Canada. I've made this assumption. Am I wrong?
Not at all. I mean, we did have wonderful role models in women like Joy Coghill. Once again in Vancouver, in the West. It's interesting. Who was an artistic director early days of the Vancouver Playhouse before Christopher. But yeah, very rare. In fact, I remember one of my favorite stories. I was directing an opera in Edmonton at the Jubilee. And something was wrong with the set. It wasn't working for the get-in. So I was called out of rehearsal, and I had to go down to the space to say if I would agree to the changes that would have to be made. More than fair. Went down, and this big IATSE guy said, "Hey, you, get off the stage." He assumed, I think, that I was, I don't know, chorus member or something, just wandering in. And the stage manager came running up and went, "Oh, no, that's a director." And he was mortified. And it was actually really lovely because after that, I got pretty much anything I wanted because he was so embarrassed. But yeah, I was the first woman that had directed for the opera company on that stage. And it surprises me because now, of course, there are so many gifted women making huge careers that it's no longer a surprise or a shock. But yeah, early days, it was unusual. Yeah.
Was it hard? Do people want to take direction?
I honestly think that's a really great question. I honestly think in some ways it was easier because I think there was a lot of women in casts who were delighted to work with another woman. It was a different style, maybe. It was a different way of approaching. And that felt very good. I didn't face a lot of resistance. It's quite normal, in fact, when you're working with new performers new to you, that there's a testing period. What's this going to be like? Can we talk? Is it about a collaboration, or is it, I want you to do this and this and this and this? Which was never my style. It certainly was an era where there was a lot more directors who did that. That was their way of working. But I came from much more sense of collaboration and conversation. But there's a test. And if you've done your homework, especially in opera, if you've done your homework, if you know the music, if they believe that you're going to aid them to be their best selves, even if they are perhaps not the most fluid movers or whatever, then they understand that you're going to do your best to be the eye they need on the outside. That's, I think, a key part of the job.
That's interesting because a part of my career was in video directing, and oftentimes I would be the only woman. And, I was going to say not too long ago, but let's be real, it was a while ago. But I think as you're saying that, it's kind of giving me this aha about, so for example, a lot of men or, leaders on camera, their resistance might be coming from the fact that could they trust me to not be made a fool of, because it's very vulnerable to be on camera or on stage. Yeah. And I just had that aha as you were speaking.
And I do think there also then gradually becomes more of a reputation situation where all of a sudden, well, I've heard from friends or I saw a show or whatever. And it's, hey, I'm looking forward to this, rather than, hi, not so sure. It'd take a couple of days, kind of thing.
Or convince me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think it's pretty fair for an actor to be careful about, I think the yes and the openness is critical. But there's also a sense of, I have opinions, I have ideas. I want to make sure that we're working together. I just finished doing a big production in Vancouver Opera, Rigoletto, with a fabulous singer, Michael Cioldi, who has done Rigoletto all over the world, the Met, everywhere. And of course, I've done a couple of productions of Rigoletto, but I haven't done hundreds. And we had such a good time. Once the click happened early, and he was confident that it was, he was willing, more than willing, actually, excited to try different ideas. And always he said, okay, well, let's give it a go. And then, oh, yeah, okay, I get it now. So we had a great time. But that's the excitement of it. It isn't just by rote, do what I say, everyone shuts up. There's no creativity in that. I know what I know. I want to see what you're interested in.
I love that phrase, when the click happened.
Good.
Yeah, the connection.
You know it. You know when all of a sudden something is fluid in rehearsal. You don't have to torturously figure out how to say something that will be constructive as opposed to defensive, have a defensive reaction. It's like anything in life, though. If you want people to be their best, they have to believe that you believe they can be fantastic. They can do a good job. They can do great work.
Yeah, that's almost like parenting in a way.
Yeah, well, in a way.
Yeah. Or maybe not. Well, when you say the click happened, when I first met you, and it was through our mutual friend, Diane Goodman, who was the longtime producer at Alberta Theatre Projects. And it was, Diane and I had the click happen. And then, and I think we had lunch together. I'm like, oh, there's the click happening. And I wonder about, as a woman leader, director, what do you do with anger in the creative world, or frustration, which can really derail the click? How do you deal with that?
Oh, wow. That's a big question. The first image that came to mind, some of it is cultural. And I was doing an important play. I was doing a play by Kevin Loring called Where the Blood Mixes, which is about his Indigenous upbringing in a very small town called Lytton on the Fraser Canyon. It's gone on to be one of the greats. It won the Governor General's Award. And it does, of course, deal with damage done in the residential school situation. There were two brilliant actors. They really were brilliant actors, but they had a long history, and they had lived the experience of residential schools, and the scarring was there. So it reached a crisis point in rehearsal between the two of them, and we had a healing circle, and it was very formal. I didn't initiate because it's not my role. We had someone come in, and it was remarkable healing. And positive and basically saved the show to go forward with that cast. It was remarkable. In the end, honest conversation. However, if one sets up it as a ritual, as a cultural event, or in a private conversation, for me, that's always been the best approach. And certainly not to let anything, not to confront, but to address a situation. I think that if you can do that, and certainly not in the heat of a confrontation or a moment, whether it's between actors or with designers or whatever. Timeouts. I am sounding like a parent. Timeouts are really a good thing, and but not letting it slide. I think you can be adverse to any kind of, we've been doing so well, let's just make it all okay. If there's a niggle there, it has to be talked about, exposed.
So when you were speaking there about conflict, I mean, it felt very relational as well, in that, in a friendship or I guess with a colleague or whatever, when you know there's something there and your heart is like, that doesn't feel good. And the choice is to, like, I'm in a nice girl around it and patch up the hole in the wall, but it's not really patched up, or dig right in and, figure out what needs doing. You're a latter solution person. You're a get right in there and dig it out and see what needs doing.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's part. I don't know why. Maybe because of the confidence my parents endowed me with growing up. You can do anything, go anywhere, do what you want, in the best sense of that, not stupidly. But it's like a relationship with when you're creating design for a new production. If you're not really straightforward, if you let something go because you don't want to, I don't want to be negative, I don't want to hurt feelings, there's always going to be something there that isn't quite gelling. It doesn't mean that you can't be convinced. I've worked with a wonderful designer, Pam Johnson, for many, many years. And yes, we'll have tussles in the best way. That is creative. That is the creative process. That's not unsafe. It's not, wanting to get down and figure it out is great. But if you're not honest, if you sort of go, okay, I'm just going to let this go, it'll be okay, that's exactly what it'll be, okay. And the amount of work and the amount of passion and the stakes of doing a theater production, okay, isn't good enough.
I love that, just to be honest, because you're also creating. I mean, I guess in a big picture, we're always creating our lives, but you're hired to create this, to bring this thing to the world where people can see it out of, these threads of gossamer almost. Like, you have to make it manifest.
In the end, you are the director. That doesn't mean obvious that you're the only one. There is a team and there is a whole team. But ultimately, there's an understanding that if I go, that pillar has got to go. Even if everyone else loves that pillar, I'm responsible. I'll take responsibility for that, and I should take responsibility for that. And I have to be true to that. That doesn't mean over the years I've gone, oh boy, boola there, should have thought about that more or whatever. But you have to be willing to expose yourself to those kind of risks. And I think not being willing to take risks, this, Carrie. You have to be willing to take risks. And that means you have to be willing to fail. That's inevitable. But fail for the right reasons, not because you were afraid to do it.
That is just such wisdom. Thanks for listening and watching Secret Heart Broadcasting. Do you know we also have a newsletter? You can subscribe by going to secretheartbroadcasting.com, or the link is also in the bio. It comes out once a month. There's information that you won't hear on the episode, including tips from our guests, and it's a great Saturday morning read. I'm curious about your early career. Let's talk a little bit about that, Glynis. Like where the comparison between your early career, the work, who you were, and I don't know if we're in the later part of your career. How about third act of your career? But yeah, what's changed as you've grown?
In the beginning was very typical of a young creative director trying to make her way in the world. Gigs were gigs. I would do anything. I directed anything, pretty much anything that was offered, because I was learning and I needed to learn, and was grateful for all the companies that took chances. Then the middle part of my career was really for 22 years. I was an artistic director, which is an entirely different thing than being a director of a production.
And was that in Victoria?
I was artistic director in Victoria for 11 years at the Belfry Theatre, my much beloved Belfry. Mm-hmm. At a very difficult time, I started. I think that's one of the reasons I got the job, is I was in town. I had done a lot with the company over its beginnings. And honestly, I don't think anyone else would have taken it. It was, the operating deficit was larger than the operating budget. It was literally, can we make payroll? Payroll, they got down to 2 people that were left, kind of thing. It was a really challenging time. But I loved the company. I loved the people involved. And so what's to lose, right? Jump in once again, risk. And I was extremely lucky in that very early on, a truly wonderful friend and colleague, Mary Dupre, became the general manager. And we just gradually brought the company back. And then at the end of my time at the Belfry, I loved this. We were in a beautiful old church, a heritage church. It was a gorgeous space, but we didn't own it. It was owned by a street shelter. Isn't that an odd combination? It was a youth hostel turned street shelter. And they decided they needed to be downtown Victoria. This is in a little neighborhood called Fernwood. And we finally had the opportunity to take over the entire building. We mounted a capital campaign driven by Mary. We did the renovations driven by our production manager, Bruce Halliday, and myself and Mary. And so we left the company in really good shape. And it's gone on through Roy Surratt and Michael Shimada to be a really fine, ongoing jewel in Canadian theatre. But I left it once we got the building because another opportunity came up, and that was to be the artistic director of the Vancouver Playhouse.
Where it all began.
Which was where it began. And I couldn't resist. And it was a really interesting time. It was a complicated time to be the artistic director of any company. We had tryouts, like we commissioned The Overcoat, Morris Panage, which I'm intensely proud of. Productions like Where the Blood Mixes was all part of the work that we did. Productions of a really high quality. But once again, it's interesting. The Playhouse was part of the Queen Elizabeth complex, sort of like the Jubilee in Alberta. There was a theater and then a large auditorium, which is the Queen Elizabeth. We were the Playhouse, which is about 800 seats, a beautiful theater, but we didn't run the space. And it was always challenging through the many artistic directors, Newton, Larry Lilo, Joy Coghill. It was always difficult. And it continued to be a challenge. So after 22 years, I decided, you know what? I'm ready to pass the torch. Sadly, the company under Max Reimer, who took on both roles, artistic director and manager of the company. He managed to secure, this is the tragedy, he finally managed to secure a new arrangement with the city of Vancouver. But by then, this was about 5 years in, the company wasn't in good shape. It just was one of the victims of the credit crunch and the many other things that were happening. So, and then the latter part of my career has been a return to freelancing, which I think as an artist has been the most rewarding for me, because instead of trying to balance running a company and doing an occasional show, I've just been able to focus on work. It's meant I've done a lot more opera, which I adore, and some teaching. I've been able to be selective. Not like at the beginning where, oh yeah, whatever, I've got a bag, I can go.
And you travel everywhere, right? Like you were on the move.
That's one of the grinds about theater, being in the arts generally. If you're lucky to be successful, that means you'll travel. And traveling is hard work. It's great, but it is wearing on the spirit and the body. So that's one of the nice things about being an AD. I was able to be more or less home, although I did a lot of work across the country.
So we talked a lot about your career, and I know you've had a pretty long-term marriage, if I'm not mistaken.
Very. Yeah.
I mean, you're an independent woman with a career, traveling all over the country. I mean, how did you meet your husband, and how did it work out to have a partner when your life was so, I want to say peripatetic, but that implies chaos. I don't think of you as a chaotic person.
Well, very lucky. One of my best friends at university was Richard, my husband, Richard Brownsey, was his best friend. We met at a golf club, which should have told me a lot about what essential passion for my husband golf is. We met, he had an apartment in Vancouver. He was studying at UBC. He was going into law. The theater company, Company One, needed billeting. We stayed with him. Magic happened. Then I left for 3 months to tour Canada. And that really cemented an understanding this was going to be my life. And if this was a no-go, then it was a no-go. But Richard met me at the airport, and that's been the way we've lived our life. I think for many, the one of the decisions I made being an artistic director, and this is not everyone, and I'm in awe of the women who continue to have not just a family in terms of husband and friends, but a family in terms of children. My decision was not to have children, which is not a regret. I'm lucky enough to have many godchildren and nieces and nephews, so I feel that lovely sense of connection and family. But for me, I knew I couldn't do what I was doing and be the parent that I think I was. I was parented in a way that I knew I needed to be able to have more time, and I just wasn't there. That's a toughie.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that too, because I think that so many women go through that. I mean, I was, lucky to have one, and it was the best of times. It was the worst of times. But yeah, that is a real consideration for so many women, and it's not the same consideration for men, of course.
No, it isn't. There was a decision. It was a difficult decision that Richard and I came to, but I kept going. We always assumed we'd have children. We come from very happy families. We always assumed we would. And then I kept going, but it's like, oh, well, there'll be an opening in a year and a half. That's crazy. That's crazy. And I think it was also in part because of this. I alluded to the situation at the Belfry when I arrived. If it had been a more stable artistic situation, I certainly would have considered. But it was really unstable. and very difficult. And the hours were ludicrous and not normal as it was, say, at the Playhouse. That was a later time.
Mm-hmm. This might be too personal, but in your relationship with Richard, we spoke at the beginning about the need for like real honesty, right? If you're going to let something slide, it's on you that you let it slide. Were you able, like, can you tell me a little bit about that? Because I think a long-term partnership with anyone has to be based on honesty and is never easy. God, if it was easy, everyone would do it.
It isn't easy. I think what happened, I should have said too, Richard was certainly planning on being a lawyer. But the Belfry, this was before I became artistic director, and the Belfry was going through one of its other crises. And I said, could you help them out this summer? They need some management. This is just before I went to law school. And he did. In theater, just kind of wouldn't let go. So he became an arts administrator. And so I think that's a great thing because he understood exactly everything that was going on, but he had a very successful independent career. He became general manager for Anna Wyman Dad's Theatre. Then he became part of the BC Arts Council, eventually became the CEO of the Arts Council. Then he accepted a position with BC Film, and that became Creative BC. So I think we both were in challenging and busy worlds, and I think that made it a lot easier. It wasn't like he was sitting saying, hey, when are you coming home? He was in China. He was at Cannes. So it was okay.
So in this long-term relationship where both of you are deeply creative and committed to the arts and traveling and popping in and out of productions, you've created this beautiful home in Victoria. That was the other thing I've been privileged to do, is for a brief second see this beautiful space you've created. And that also doesn't happen by accident.
You know, we're in the arts. So we bought the cheapest house, literally the cheapest house on the market. We got a dog. I love this. We had finally a really nice rental in James Bay. It was a townhouse by the ocean. It was lovely. But we got a dog because I was teaching at UVic one year, and a student's cousin's litter didn't take, and they needed the puppies to go to homes. And so all of a sudden we needed more room than we had. So Richard said, well, if you can find a house we can afford. Well, I got the cheapest house in Victoria, and it's just been an ongoing process. We were always going to make this our starter house, but it's an old cottage, 30s cottage, but it had quite a big garden. And I started gardening. My mom was an incredible gardener. And I just thought, I'll just put a few things in. And, well, the bug, you just, oh, my God, it came back. I'll do it again.
I can do it. It lived.
And so instead of moving, we decided, a friend, John Kay, is an architect, and he did a very small bedroom addition for us. And so it meant we could stay. We never needed a larger space. And Richard has become a very good gardener as well. So he's very attentive to gardening. He does a lot of the maintenance. I do a lot of I like the plant here. No, maybe we'll move it. But it's been great. And we love our neighbors. We love our neighborhood. It's an old, settled, old school, working class neighborhood. It's just great.
Are you still on the garden tour? Because I think listeners during the garden home tour in Victoria can actually see what you've created.
Yes, it's been lovely. The Conservatory of Music, which of course I'm connected to in many ways, has a garden tour every year, and we've done that. And the art gallery did our artists at home in their home. So we did that. That was more trepidatious. It's a small house. Do we really want people coming through? It was great. Everybody, both experiences were terrific. It's a small street. Parking was an issue. We had to send out leaflets to the neighbors to let them know what was going on, but everybody was great. So, we've just gradually, I think the nesting thing is an offshoot of what we talked about earlier, the traveling. And when I'm away in a hotel room, I love to think about my garden. I love to think, what can I do? How can I do? And I come home and there's a flurry of a paint job or a whatever. And we've got outside the Shaw Festival pergola, the National Arts Center pathway, the jobs I've been doing can feed the garden habit is what's happening.
We kind of skipped over this. So we have the beginning of your career. Glynis will work anywhere. The middle of your career, the artistic director at two established companies and saving one of them. And then now kind of this, wise woman who travels about the country. Do you want to talk about some of the productions you've done that have meant the most to you? Because I'm really struck by the fact you're creating this ephemeral beauty that vanishes, as it does in theater.
I owe a lot and to the long time artistic director of the Pacific Opera, Victoria, Timothy Burdick. He came and saw a show, a musical that I directed at the Belfry. This is when Pacific Opera was just starting. And he said, hey, do you want to be the stage director of the very first show the Pacific Opera ever did, called Rossini's Barber of Seville? Thank goodness it was in English. I didn't even ask. I was that much of a newbie. But I'm going, musical sort of must be the same, right? But that was the starting point. So that show, and then subsequently, that relationship is absolute part of the bedrock of what I consider my most important work. With Timothy, it's started, here's a newbie not even understanding that normally you sing in Italian rather than English, and a chorus just will sing and not move unless you ask them to. I've done De Valkyrie, the Wagner with them, which is a standout for me. Many new productions. I became and have become a very good friend of John Estacio, the brilliant Canadian composer, lives in Edmonton. And we did a production called Hours, Ours, Hours, not tick, 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 in Newfoundland about World War I and the loss of the lives of all the young men from Newfoundland in the Battle of Beaumont Hill. And we did it at the 100th anniversary, the celebration, Opera on the Avalon. And that, I will never forget that opening as long as I live. I've never experienced anything quite like it. It was their story. And John wrote a magnificent, Robert Shafi was the librettist. But John's music was so powerful, so evocative, that by the end, the audience in the Confederation Center were standing. They were all standing. The Governor General was there. And they just couldn't contain themselves. It just was theirs. And it was so powerful and something that'll stay with me. That experience manifested itself in a very different way. That was a big experience. I've alluded to Where the Blood Mixes, Kevin Loring's piece. We did a workshop of it before we were asked to do it. We did it in Vancouver at the Magnetic North Festival and the National Arts Center. It went all over. It was very exciting. But the first workshop that we did, we just got in a car, 2 suitcases, got in a car, and we went to Lytton. And we were going to do a reading for Kevin's community. And that's nervous making and exciting. And we didn't know how it would be received, who would come, whatever. So this is before the fires, I should say, when Lytton was still a functioning community. It was unfortunately a victim of the horrible fires in British Columbia a few years ago. Anyway, so we're going to do this reading, and then there was going to be a feast afterward. which everyone was invited to. And it was about 15 minutes to showtime, and no one was there. The hall was in a church hall. It was sort of up on a hill. And I'm going, oh my God, what are we going to do? Well, we'll do it, but what's happened? And then we're standing looking out at the little village. It's village right on the Fraser River. And all of a sudden, just families, people just started to walk up. They started to come. And they did come. And that reading will live with me forever. The feast afterward, the speeches, the pride in Kevin and his work. He is now, I should say, head of the Indigenous Theatre department with Laurie Marchand, another great friend from Kamloops, who did partner with us on the development of the piece. It was an extraordinary event. It's now had an extraordinary life. So glad others have done it. It's had many different productions. So there's that. There's, I guess, in terms of my work at the Playhouse, the production I still remember was Wit, which is a play. Do you know that play? It's a remarkable piece by a woman, Margaret Edson, who only wrote one play, and it won everything. It was a remarkable play, but she wrote it. She was a kindergarten teacher, and she wrote it because her brother died of cancer, and it's about a woman's journey through cancer.
Through cancer, I have seen this, yeah.
And I did it with Canadian Stage and the Playhouse with Shauna McKenna. And we realized, actually, it taught us a lot. We needed to have people at the theater after the performance to help people with grief, to be able to articulate. We didn't, when you do a piece like David Mamet, that there's obviously going to be conversation, and you set that up in advance. We didn't realize that people were going to react the way they did. And I have to say, the people at the Civic Theaters were so brilliant, especially the first couple of previews, and then we rallied and figured out what we needed to do. But they just allowed people to stay as long as they needed, because it was so powerful. It's really about dignity in dying, science, and how difficult it is to sometimes allow a person to let go. I just adored that play. So those are the experiences that come to mind. There's so many.
And all of those talk about the power of theater, right? They cannot be replicated through, video like we're doing, or film. I mean, certainly it can be powerful, but that in the room with our humanity and soul to soul in a moment that will vanish, it just enhances the potency of, whatever it is we're feeling as an audience member, and, possibly as a director or an actor or a set designer. I don't know, but
it's very astute, because that is exactly it. It wasn't just we gave a wonderful performance or Shauna gave a brilliant performance, but it's the audience response and then the sharing of that response in community, live, in person. And that's magic.
You've had, a remarkable life that is by no means, you have, so much verve. I'm in no way am I thinking, well, are you ever going to retire? Is that a thing for you?
Well, I am actually, seriously now.
Oh, yes. Uh-huh.
Hold back. Well, I'm off to Toronto because I'm involved in this with a new piece called 16 Saturdays. But I really am thinking about traveling more. We love travel, and we've done a lot of it, but never together, and always for work. So we're just starting. We're like newbies in terms of traveling to be in different cultures, different places. So yeah, I have a wonderful community of friends here that I've said goodbye to for 3 months, or 2 months or 1 month just doing shows. So there's a lot of connections that need to be made. I'd love to take that master gardening course that I've promised myself to do for about 20 years. So yeah, there'll be other opportunities for creativity, I think.
Thank you for listening. This is Secret Heart Broadcasting. And if you like what you're hearing or seeing, please share it with a friend, like, or subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thank you. I think as people grow old, and I'll just speak for myself because I'm a control group of one, but you become more aware of, there's more life lived than is left. And, what you do with that time is really important. And I'm doing that from living a pretty normal life without any, big dramatic peaks. You have had this experience, and I remember you speaking about at lunch where you were in Toronto. It's your story. Do you want to tell it? But to me, I'm just like, oh my gosh, if that doesn't bring living into focus, I don't know what would.
That was kind of crazy. Interestingly, that was a workshop at Canadian Opera for that opera on the Avalon put together 4 hours for the Newfoundland show. So I was meeting the music and John Astasio for the first time. And the opera company was in a kind of a not so good part of town. You would be careful. And so the guys all walked me to the subway. I was staying with a friend in a really wonderful part of Toronto called Summerhill, just by Rosedale. It's lovely, lovely, lovely. Took the subway home. I'm just walking, a 5-minute walk to my friend's home. And all of a sudden, I feel someone coming up from behind me. And it turns out that I was mugged or robbed or whatever. And the experience, it's surreal in every way that there were 2 people. One grabbed my bag. I held on. And then you remember things. So I remember, oh yeah, you're supposed to just let it go. It's just a bag. Let it go. So I did. But the person holding me decided to punch me. And that was a shock because after all the stage fright I've done in my life, I've never, ever been hit. And so in real life. So that was a shocker. Then the other person wanted to get going, which was a blessing. And they left. I kind of got up. I was on the ground and I took whoa, and walked the 2 more minutes to the home. It was that close. And my friend was out, but her sons were fabulous. They were in. They called her. They called the police. Police came. Because I'd been held by this guy who was wearing a totally black, I'm the theater director, so I'm doing can I see anything, black outfit, black balaclava, couldn't, it was, anyway, I'm trying to do any of that kind of thing. The police said, we have to send for a medical team to examine you because you were touched. Fine. I'm still working on the I was punched thing. Well, it turned out I was stabbed with one of those blade things. It was not good. But the good news was no blood or anything because it was so sharp. So hauled off to the ambulance. In the meantime, we're tracing my handbag. I had one of my photos in it. So it's a What's Up app. Where is it? So we're tracing my bag going around downtown Toronto. So they're trying to do that. I ended up in the emergency at Sunnybrook Hospital, which was brilliant. They were great. I was fine. The bottom news was, he said, you're a poster child of where to get stabbed where it doesn't matter. So they were, I had all the testing and everything. Then the police came back, and this is the not good part. I wasn't lucky, and it was fine. It's traumatic. But the person went on that another person was attacked that night, and they were killed. And he was evidently a remarkable doctor. His husband, they lived in downtown Toronto, and he was walking his dog. He was a musician and sang in choirs. So it was tragic. I couldn't go home right away because I was too bruised and I had to sit in a certain position.
Well, and you'd been stabbed.
So I did something. The first day was the police and reporting and, all of that. But the second day where I could have stayed and, maybe should have, but I thought, you know what? I can stand. I'm comfortable. I'm most comfortable standing. I'm not comfortable lying. So I went back into the workshop. And I am convinced to this day that being it with that group and with their support, because that's when a team just coalesces, and listening to that glorious music, that's what I focused on. And that's what my head was filled with instead of the experience. So I was extremely lucky. I've had no recurring aftermaths. I'm able to talk about it quite objectively. And not because I've shut something out, but I'm convinced that the music did heal. I'm convinced.
I love that. One of the things when you told that story to me the first time was, I think there was a part of you that, as it was happening, remembered to have a voice.
Yes.
To kind of not like a woman, or but to.
I was trying. That was the scary thing, because I have a big voice. I have a voice that's literally stopped the Calgary Symphony because something went wrong on stage, and I screamed, "Stop!" and they did. So a big voice. My voice was kind of, and I'm going, Jesus, I'm supposed to make noise. So I'm trying to work my trying to do all this serious stuff. It's so funny how your mind works and how you're trying to figure out how to handle an extraordinary situation. But I really do understand when people say I couldn't make any sound. My voice, that high breath thing, that's where my head, I wasn't using my lungs. I wasn't using my diaphragm. I needed to make a bigger sound. So it was a struggle.
I mean, to remember is in a crisis situation to keep your voice. This whole idea of diaphragmatic breathing and, especially to have a voice.
Yeah. And now I would say I am more cautious. What I'm more cautious about is when I get off the train, subway, whatever, look around and look behind you and be more aware. I was busy window shopping in Toronto, Yonge Street. I was having a good time. So I was oblivious, I'll admit it. And the other probably wonderful thing for me was being in a theater space that's cold. I had about 52 layers of clothing on. So I was able to, I was protected somewhat from the experience. So I was lucky. And, but as I say, that was the difficult thing, was meeting the family of the man who was killed. And many of the singers knew him from choir circles in Toronto. So it was a big deal. Yeah.
When you told that story, I just was so appreciative of the uncertainty of life, and the fact that you didn't make that a fearful thing.
It did feel surreal. I mean, I walked home to Carol's Place many, many, many times from many different theaters in Toronto. And it's a beautiful neighborhood, and a dog park, and there's lights and there's everything. But it was dangerous that night. Wow.
I wanted to ask you about any kind of, with this very operatic life that you've lived, is there any...
It doesn't feel it, it's just kind of, a little plop in the log, and then this happened, and then this happened. It's funny.
Oh my! Well, from the outside, it's it reads like fiction. But what is there, like a takeaway or something you've gleaned that you would want to pass on to, I don't know, other women directors, other humans, other souls in the world? Something that is just something absolutely to be true.
I'm often asked by people that love the arts, or have young people, making a life in the arts. And This is certainly not just me. The classic response, you have to really, really, really love it. Really love it. Not, oh, it's really fun and whatever. Because it's tough. I've been, and I mean lucky. I mean not untalented. Not that I didn't work hard, but things happened for me, like the belfry, that are not a given in the way a normal career goes. So the passionate love for what I do remains, and for the arts, and that's a core drive. It's not, God knows, it's not financial, it's not economic, it's not for fame, but it's feeling part of something. I'm a generation that was part of moving from British and American work to Canadian work. And that's been a core in my life. And I feel like the contribution to the multiplicity that is Canada and the many, many threads that make up the Canadian tapestry has driven a lot of what I do. Don't do it if you get a rush on opening night. That's not good enough, and it won't sustain you. So don't be fearful. Don't be afraid to fail. We've talked about that. But ultimately do it because I think it has to be for and this may sound a little airy-fairy, but for a better purpose or bigger purpose than the gratification of knowing you've done a good job. It has to be for something. That's why every one of those plays that really stand out for me weren't just a pleasant evening of theater. They meant a great deal to the people that saw them. And you are part of that, making that happen.
Yeah, I believe in something, creating something to the collective. I don't know what it is, but yeah, we're here. Everyone is here. Everybody.
To feel part of something that's bigger than yourself is very reassuring. Like looking at the galaxy and knowing how small we are. It's scary, but it's also reassuring. We're not just it. So
one of the questions I ask everyone who says yes to being on the show is books that have influenced you, books you're reading. So I don't know if you have one or two or three that you want to share, but are there? I'm assuming you're a great reader.
I'm a reader. Can you see it?
Ah, yes. You have the library I long for with open bookshelves.
Books are my life. I am reading right now Adam Nicholson's Bird School, which is about a little wood. And he's the son of the gardeners, Vitus Sackville West, in their famous garden in England. And his journey from that kind of horticultural background into the rewilding movement in Britain and our planet and being responsible for our planet. So I'm reading more nonfiction now than I used to. But I'm really loving that book, and so I can recommend that book. And I'm drawn to women writers. And I would say right now, Rachel Cusk she is not everyone's cup of tea. I know that because I've had very lively conversations. But I love Rachel Cusk. I think she's a remarkable writer. I'm in awe of Margaret Atwood. Look at what she's doing. Look at that 60-minute interview. Oh my God, she's a force of nature. I just adore her. Not maybe her book so much, which is interesting. But I love her as an icon, as a creative, as someone to admire.
Did you ever direct or touch The Edible Woman?
Yeah, I've directed a couple of her pieces. I didn't do her opera. A good friend, Brenna Connor, a very talented young woman who is now the artistic director of Pacific Opera Victoria. Isn't that exciting? Brenna did Handmaiden's Tale at Banff this summer. So a challenging piece musically, but obviously an important story. So, yeah, I could go on. I actually could go on. I love all kinds of books. I love junky Nordic thrillers. I'm a reader. Yeah, lifelong.
Do you ever want to write your own autobiography?
No, there's a part of me that wouldn't mind attempting a play, probably to remain forever in a drawer, because I've done so much dramaturging over the years, and worked with so many brilliant people. I realize I understand storytelling very well, but the gift of writing, I don't think it's mine.
I feel like this is a to be continued kind of ellipsis at the end of our conversation. Yeah. We'll see what happens next year after some travel. Yeah. It's been a real pleasure, Glynis. Thank you so much for being on Secret Heart Broadcasting. And I think I love that this interview, of course, brings out the theater nerd in me, which I love. But you've touched on such universal topics.
I hope so. I hope even people that theater just isn't ever going to be their thing. I hope that they've been given access into a world that I think is important increasingly in this AI weirdness. There's real actors up there, and they really are talking. I think it's an important reality feeling of connection. And I think that the work you're doing is really important. That's why I'm happy to say.
Oh, well, thank you so much. It's just, it's delightful. And this is my secret heart. This is my passion, and I'm old enough, and, I'll just be brave and see what happens. And look what's happened. Thank you so much for being here today. Thanks for listening. If you like the show, please tell your friends.